And Bernie. So Jennifer, do the honors, make everybody aware that we're being recorded.
Yep, you're being recorded.
Okay. Plenty of people on Zoom, and here's Lisa. So we're just getting ramped up slowly.
Sorry.
No problem. And I'm just wondering if Greg is going to join us for water report. But anyway, so we have a call to order, and therefore minutes. Have people had any chance to take a look at minutes? You want to take a moment?
Fine with me.
Yeah, it was good for me too.
Good for me.
Okay, all in favor, motion approved, all in favor, we're good. Okay. Which means that we're going to skip over the Greg's usual initial report. Did you want to comment on rainfall?
I can just comment, the rainfall has been excellent so far. A year-to-date or month-to-date number as of 4/13 was 3.4 inches, which puts us at a year-to-date number of 21.77 inches, which basically is one of our better replenishment periods with regards to the amount of precipitation that we've had.
Right. And Greg and Ken and I were communicating by email just about the draft of the water level report. And Greg was, delighted to see where we were at. And I caution, be careful what you wish for. There's the opposite side of the equation too, where we're flooding. And so ever since then, he's been sending out divergent drafts saying, comparing where we're at to 2010 when we did have all that flooding. We had to pump 6 million gallons overboard. So we're not quite there yet, but even the last time he said so, we had a whole bunch more rain. So it's not, we're certainly in a sweet spot right now. There's no reason to be concerned unless it just rains for 40 more days and 40 more nights. All right. So with that set aside, and maybe we'll return to a little bit on that if Greg joins us. I'd like to turn it over to Joe to introduce the Suffolk County Department of Health Services Principal Public Engineer.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Today we have Jason Heim joining us, which I'm very excited to introduce to you. Jason is the Principal Engineer for the Bureau of Drinking Water at the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. They are the boots on the ground regulator for us, for our community. Jason and I have worked together on a number of compliance and regulatory issues on behalf of the town systems, but also Jason would oversee private wells and drinking water related issues for private citizens as well. So some of you may have come across them before, maybe not. Nonetheless, one of Jason's goals, as he expressed to me, is outreach to the various communities which fall within his purview. So he's here today to talk about some higher level regulatory items that are in the news lately, the PFAS regulations that are coming down from the federal government, and also some context around other local Shelter Island drinking water issues. So he's got a nice presentation put together for us today, so I won't drag my feet any longer on this. Jason, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, I appreciate that. Thanks, Joe. Nice introduction. It's my pleasure to be here to be able to present to everyone. Let me just share my screen. Can everybody see my presentation okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the audio is coming across okay? Excellent. I apologize for not being able to attend in person today. Unfortunately, a scheduling conflict came up, and it's a beautiful day to be able to take that long drive out to Shelter Island. But I'm glad we were able to participate remotely.
And we hope you'll join us at a later date.
Oh yeah, please, absolutely. So I am Jason Heim. I'm the Chief of the Office of Water Resources here at Suffolk County Department of Health Services. As Joe said, we're the boots on the ground, sort of overseeing the drinking water supply, groundwater, some of the fresh surface waters in Suffolk County. This map was pulled from one of our modeling efforts that we've done with our consultant. It kind of shows what we're talking about, where We're standing on top of our aquifer, and that water is either going to go into one of these blue areas, which is our modeled contributing area to a public supply well, or as you well know, off into the surface water bodies in yellow. That's our contributing areas that are modeled for the streams and embayments.
And this is based on the USGS mod flow model?
I think that was based off of the model that Camp Dresser and McKee developed for us as part of its modeling efforts.
Okay, thank you.
Including the Sub-Watersheds Plan, 2015 Comprehensive Water Resources Management Plan, and then the State Health Department sponsored modeling efforts back around 2000. So, this is a little cartoon depiction, generally what's going on in the mainland anyways, where we have 3 water-bearing formations, upper glacial, there's a clay confining layer, Magathie Aquifer, and Raritan, and then finally the deepest water down in the Lloyd Aquifer. We only have about 5 or 6 deep Lloyd Aquifer wells on the mainland in Suffolk County. Over on Shelter Island, it's my understanding you really just have this upper glacial unconfined aquifer with fresh water. But as you can see, there's various potential contamination sources, either through on-site septics or agriculture, other different land uses, petroleum. But then we have these shallow supply wells, and that's where our water comes from. You wouldn't believe how many phone calls we get where people think it comes from an underground river, or we get city water, but no, it's all coming from beneath our feet. That's why we have that designation as a sole source aquifer. That's our sole source of drinking water. So this is an example of one of these model outputs that we received from Camp Dresser and McKee. This would be where they put in a lot of different modeling information regarding the soil characteristics. They're looking at land use, they're looking at the flow rates for public supply wells, and they're trying to determine where a drop of water would fall, and then eventually that water would get into our public supply well screen and then up and either have to be treated before it's sent out to the public. So this particular example shows that in red, the 0 to 2 year travel time. That's the most critical because Camp Dresser and McKee let us know that, bacteria and viruses are a potential concern within that close proximity. And then it goes out to as many as 100. And I think there's a modeling effort that actually goes further. So they did this for our about 700 community public supply wells across the county. So what we're going to talk about today, I want to talk to you again about that drinking water source. I want to give you an overview of our office, the Office of Water Resources, and then the division of a whole, our Division of Environmental Quality, and then some of the capabilities that our Public Environmental Health Laboratory has out in Hauppauge. Go over a few slides, real quick summary of 2015 comp plan and some of the water quality trends that were observed as part of that plan. Speak to you about the PFAS regulations, as Joe mentioned, and then a real quick preliminary assessment of some recent water quality data and statistics from the community water supply on Shelter Island, the non-community public water supply on Shelter Island, and the private wells that we've sampled over the last 10 years. The community water suppliers, for those that don't know, I like to explain that to people is think of where people sleep. So those where somebody's going to reside year round. We're going to regulate that water supplier to a higher threshold. And those are our community water suppliers. Non-community water suppliers, think of more of like our businesses. They may be restaurants or a hotel, motel, that type of thing, or even Shelter Island School. So our division, the Division of Environmental Quality has 5 different offices: Office of Wastewater Management, Pollution Control, Office of Ecology, my office, the Office of Water Resources, and our Public Environmental Health Laboratory. Our Office of Wastewater Management processes applications essentially for new construction. They also regulate the sewage treatment plants in Suffolk County. Office of Pollution Control, that's where I got my start with Suffolk County. They regulate the gas stations. They oversee those storage facilities. They oversee the environmental site assessments and cleanup work. They also regulate swimming pool facilities. My office, we regulate about 900 public supply wells, including community and non-community suppliers. We install groundwater monitoring wells, which I'll talk more about later. And then we do private well sampling, and we have a groundwater sampling team as well. Office of Ecology, they regulate bathing beaches, out at local beaches in the county along our shorelines. They also do marine monitoring. You can see a picture here where they collected some eels for sample analysis. And they also are involved with the septic improvement program, which involves the innovative alternative septic systems and the grant program associated with that. And the fifth office, our Public Environment Health Lab, they're testing drinking water for about 330 different contaminants and about 10,000 samples per year.
Quite a volume.
So who regulates the drinking water in Suffolk County? Well, it all starts at the federal government. The EPA regulates the tap water, and then the Food and Drug regulates the safety of bottled water. The state health department has taken primacy for a lot of these regulations, and they've incorporated them into their subpart 5-1 for the public water supply. They have private well construction, setback distances and standards in their appendix 5B of subpart 5-1. And they also have another section of the code dedicated to bottled water. But Suffolk County Department of Health Services, as we mentioned, is the boots on the ground. We directly regulate the public water and the construction of public water supply and private wells. We also do have a bottled water plant in Suffolk County. It's located out in western Suffolk County, I think in Lindenhurst and Farmingdale. And we collect bottled water surveillance samples at that facility, as well as out off the shelves, to verify that it is in accordance with subpart 5-6 requirements. So this is some pictures of some of our team out in the field, looking at what they look at, the elevated storage tanks. They're collecting samples for the raw water quality coming right out of these large pumps. This is a motor connected to a vertical turbine pump here on the mainland to a deep well, making sure that that's all in compliance with the applicable regulations. They're also out in the distribution systems, collecting samples from our community water suppliers every other month, verifying not only is the water quality at the pump station meeting standards, but also what's going out to the consumer at representative locations like, fast food restaurants or fire departments, continues to comply with drinking water standards. In Suffolk County, we estimate right now there's about 30,000 private domestic supply wells. To install a public supply or a private domestic supply well drillers need to be certified by Suffolk County Department of Health Services. We hold a training class. There is a nominal fee, and they need to certify that they are going to comply with those applicable regulations. The potable wells that are constructed as part of a wastewater management permit have to comply with the private water system standards. Replacement water supply wells also need to comply with those standards. If they're being done by a certified well driller and they can't meet the necessary separation distance, the well driller and the homeowner need to sign off on a non-compliance form, so the homeowner is aware that that replacement well does not comply with current construction requirements under Suffolk County Code. The quality of water for these new construction projects is verified through testing prior to issuance of the final approval. But after they receive that final approval and they get the certificate of occupancy from the town, the private well owner is taking the responsibility for the quality of water coming from their well. Our hydrogeologists estimate that groundwater can move about 1 to 2 feet per day, depending on where we are. So you think about that, 1 to 2 feet per day, that may be, okay, 1 year, that's 365 feet away. So what could have happened within that distance from your well over the last year or two? So This is why Suffolk County Health Department recommends annual sampling of the private wells. Bureau of Drinking Water, our staff in our Bureau of Drinking Water, they collect private well samples. If it's upon request, we do have a program. It's a nominal $100 fee right now. If there is a financial hardship, there is a fee waiver available if you meet the income requirements. And if we do a private well survey, then there's actually no fee to the homeowners that are identified in a private well survey. We're going to initiate private well surveys in response to detections from our groundwater monitoring wells, or maybe coordination with the state agencies, or maybe it's after a private well request in an area comes back with contamination at levels of concern. We may propose that through our administration and initiate a private well survey in that surrounding area. Our groundwater well drilling team, we have, large drill rigs. We also have smaller geoprobe rigs where we can collect, install smaller diameter wells. And this is our example of some of our groundwater sampling setups. And we've done a number of investigations involving things like dumping sites, illegal dumping sites, superfunds, vegetative organic waste or composting facilities, and then looking into potential emerging contaminant sources. Our team also collects samples associated with our pesticide monitoring program. And we do, in Office of Water Resources, we do take fresh surface water and stream samples as part of our work. We've worked very closely with our Public Environmental Health Laboratory. As I said, they have the capability to do those approximately 330 different parameters. That involves volatile organic compounds and semi-volatile organic compounds, which may include things like pesticides, 1,4-dioxane, which is another relatively recent emerging contaminant, PPCPs or pharmaceutical personal care products, inorganics, radiological contaminants. We're one of only a few labs in the state certified to do radiologicals in drinking water samples. We look for bacteria, and then just last year we were able to incorporate the analytical testing capability in-house to run PFAS samples. As I said, the lab also has the capability to do groundwater, fresh surface water, marine water samples, sewage, solid and liquid hazardous waste samples. Just a real brief overview of some of the highlights from the comp plan regarding water quality and trends. We regulate diffuse public supply well network. At the time, we had about 1,000 public supply wells. Several of our small systems have since connected to larger community water supply systems. We had about 30,000 private wells, we estimated. And we do have about 1.5 million people living in the county, most of which are unsewered. So they have on-site septics in about 74% of the population. This was an analysis that I did looking at some of the public supply wells in the glacial and Magathie aquifers. The upper line here are the average glacial aquifer concentration of nitrates. We were looking at about 2.5 milligrams per liter in our glacial wells back in 1987. We've seen an increase in the data that I evaluated up through 2013. And then in our deeper Magathie aquifer, we saw an increase from 0.91 milligrams per liter up to 1.76 in 2013. Well below the drinking water standard of 10 milligrams per liter, but still, upward trend.
And that's 10 years ago.
Yeah, now it is 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So as part of that 2015 comp plan, we also looked at some of the VOCs. So we did look at a couple of compounds where there were bans on the chemicals. So 1,1,1 trichloroethane or 1,1,1 TCA That was a cesspool additive that was banned around 1980. And then US production was banned of the contaminant in 1996. And the levels, as you can see from the chart, have significantly decreased. Same thing with MTBE, which is banned in New York State in around 2004. And the concentrations of the number of detections that we observe in our public supply wells has decreased between 2005 and 2013 based on our data sets. In perchloroethylene, trichloroethylene hadn't been a ban. This was one of these that was a dry cleaning solvent. I think it still is. You can see there's a kind of an upward trend. Trichloroethylene, another chlorinated solvent that's been used in industry in Suffolk County in the past, that's also seen an increase in the data sets we evaluated. Pesticides, we don't generally see MCL exceedances in the raw water. We have seen that with these banned pesticides, the concentrations that were observed are decreasing. There is an increased frequency that was observed for some of the ones that are continued in use, the metalaxyl and imidacloprid. Suffolk County Health Department programs have detected over 100 pesticide compounds, mostly at low levels. There's not a lot of specific drinking water standards or maximum contaminant levels for these pesticide and their degradates. But these private wells are especially vulnerable to pesticides because of how shallow they are. This is something that I pulled out of the comp plan work. This is metalaxyl D-Tex from 1997 through 2010 in the county at public supply wells, private wells, test wells, and our distribution system samples and monitoring wells and surface water. Some of the most commonly detected that were evaluated were aldicar, metolachlor, dactyl, TCPA, which is a degradate, dichloropropane, allichlor, Dynaseb, metalaxyl, imidacloprid, simazine, and atrazine. Something that we've been focused on over the last several years, many years, is PFAS, per and polyfluoral alkyl substances. PFOA and PFAS are some of the most studied of the PFAS compounds. There are thousands of these compounds out there. I want to say the last estimate that I heard, it was somewhere on the order of 9,000 different PFAS compounds. PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid, has been mainly used in manufacturing of fluoropolymers like nonstick pans. It's also used as a component in the aqueous film forming foam that's used to fight petroleum fires. That was used between 1965 and 1975. PFOS, perfluorooctane sulfonate, was used in the production of firefighting foams as well, also in hydraulic fluids and photolithography, which is to make like little chips. Major consumer product related uses are those stain resistant, dirt resistant coatings that were used on carpets, oil and grease repellents for paper and packaging. This is something that I borrowed from California. PFAS was used with associated with pesticides, stain resistant, microwave popcorn bags, eye makeup, pizza boxes, paints, sealants, varnishes, cleaning products, nail polish, dental floss, nonstick cookware, butter-resistant clothing, shampoos, candy wrappers, and fast food packaging wrappers. New York State, at the end of 2022, prohibited the sale of food packaging which contains intentionally added PFAS compounds. So many people may have seen some of their to-go containers have changed at the restaurants that they frequent since that point. I know I have. So why are we concerned about PFAS? Well, according to the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, Although more research is needed, high levels of certain PFAS may lead to increased cholesterol, changes in liver enzymes, a decreased vaccine response in children, increased risk of high blood pressure or preeclampsia in pregnant women, small decreases in infant birth weights, and increased risk of kidney or testicular cancer. And this is something our toxicologists had provided us with. It's any increased risk of health effects depends upon the amount of exposure, after the exposure occurs, the route of the exposure, whether that's through ingestion, through eating or drinking, or inhalation or dermal exposure through the skin, and the duration of said exposure. It would also depend on individual factors that might make someone more susceptible than someone else. So what's been done to regulate these? Well, in New York State, they took the lead to regulate PFOS and PFOA. They set their drinking water standards in 2020 at 10 parts per trillion. When we went out and did some private well sampling, if there was not a public water supply available, then the state DEC offered POET systems, or point of entry treatment systems, for those homeowners based on the exceedances of those drinking water standards. So this just shows you water coming in from the well, whether the pump is in the well, a submersible pump, or whether it's a little centrifugal pump here. It goes up into a pressure tank and through a pressure gauge. Then there may be a pre-filter, like a cartridge filter, and then it may pass through a flow meter, and then through 2 granular activated carbon systems. Those granular activated carbon systems are generally effective at removing organic contaminants, including these PFAS compounds. And then there may be some existing treatment system that the homeowner may have on site. And then the state DEC's POET system includes a UV or ultraviolet light disinfection before it goes off to the homeowner's use. But what are the public water suppliers doing when they find this these contaminants? Well, they're either shutting down the well or they're restricting use of the well until those periods that were necessary to meet peak demand. So the New York State regulation gave public water suppliers time to be able to put these treatment systems online. So those longer treatment systems may include large granular activated carbon filtration systems like this, or for a small public water supplier, they may just connect to a larger supply. And then the public water suppliers were required to notify the consumers of any maximum contaminant level exceedance and the actions that they were going to take to mitigate exposure. Well, this is sort of fortuitous because just last week, I just put this slide together at the end of last week. The federal government announced their federal maximum contaminant levels. They have not been published in the Federal Register yet. We anticipate that to happen either later this month or early next month. But they did let us know last Wednesday on the 10th that they were intending to set up maximum contaminant levels for PFOS at 4 parts per trillion. The current state standard is 10. And then PFOA, they're going to drop that similarly from 10 at the state down to 4 federal level. They're also creating 3 new PFAS MCLs for PFHXS, PFNA, and HFPO-DA, which is also referred to as Gen X. This was one of the newer PFAS compounds. They have indicated that they're going to set MCLs at 10 parts per trillion for each of those compounds. And then they're also creating this new system to sort of regulate these 3 PFAS compounds at 10, plus another PFAS compound, PFBS, as a mixture. So they're setting up this calculation, and they're calling it a hazard index. So they're taking samples and they're dividing them by what they call their health-based values, individual and specific to those compounds. So Gen X, N, PFBS, they're saying is 2000, PFNA and PFHXS, they're using these MCLs. So if we divide our concentration by these health-based values and add them all up, the mixture can't be greater than 1. Otherwise, that would also be considered a maximum contaminant level exceedance. However, it should be noted that based on what we're reviewing, the hazard index MCL is determined based on a running annual average, not a single sample. So that means if you did quarterly sampling at a community water supply or a non-community public water supply system, you may exceed in 1 quarter, but if the running annual average of the previous 4 quarters was less than 1, it wouldn't be considered a maximum contaminant level exceedance based on what we see right now in the EPA rule.
Hey, Jason, could you go back to that for a second?
Yes.
Could you, the hazard index, could you talk a little bit more about the thinking behind this approach in combining some of these specific contaminant or relating some of these specific contaminants as opposed to individual MCLs only?
Sure. So I believe what the thought process was by the federal government was to try to incorporate some sort of risk association with concentrations that are detected for these contaminants, but maybe just below the drinking water standard. But if we have a bunch of detections that are just below the drinking water standard, what about like sort of the additive or synergistic effects of all of those detections? So this is their way to try to compensate for some of that, is this new equation where they divide those actual detections by these health-based values, and then sort of look at it over a whole year as part of these running annual averages. So they're trying to give us some benefit to looking at them as a whole, as a mixture, as opposed to just an individual contaminants MCL.
Jason, is the general thinking that the broader family of compounds will have similar health impacts? And that's why they're related. Sort of, this family is large, so that this is a way to sort of quantify lesser exposure, but to many different varieties of the compound.
Simultaneously.
So my staff did review something in the EPA documents, and they did pull out in the EPA documents associated with this announcement that there are specific PFAS, like for each individual PFAS that they're proposing these standards for, there were specific health concerns for each individual contaminant. So earlier I talked about, generically PFAS, hey, these are things that we may be concerned about. EPA documents identify specific health concerns for each individual contaminant. I don't have that at my fingertips at the moment, but that's something I could certainly share, that summary.
Yeah, I would just comment, make 2 comments. One is that 4 parts per trillion is an incredibly small number.
That's right.
That formula would suggest, just in trying to understand it, look at it, understand it, what it's trying to say is saying that PFBS has a much smaller contribution to the health risk index than the other 3 components there, because you're dividing it by 2,000. You're suggesting that that's less consequential, the presence of PFBS, by a significant amount, orders of magnitude, than the other 3.
In the trainings that we've attended, yeah, that's what we're hearing, is that based on the available health impact information, regarding PFBS, this is what the federal government believes to be, that reference.
The best balance, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you started to conduct tests for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Our analytical capabilities include these compounds, and some of the testing that we've done even before we developed the in-house capability through contractors have identified. I know PFHXS, PFNA, and PFBS. GenX, I think that was more recently added, but I don't think that we've seen detections of GenX just yet.
And have you encountered situations where you've breached these thresholds?
The 4 part per trillions
Any of them?
and these proposed 10. Yes, so we're currently going through our data, doing those preliminary assessments right now. So if I could just get to the next slide.
Sure.
This is what the federal regulation is going to require. So there is, similar to the state regulation, they're giving public water suppliers some time to be able to monitor and then implement exposure mitigating measures, treatment, removing wells from service, replacing wells. So other states may not have been as proactive as we were in New York State. And maybe they haven't even tested for these beyond the UCMR3, the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule List 3, that was testing was done in 2013 through 2015. After we saw that data that the federal government required at that time to see if there was occurrence information in the major public water suppliers, we required our major water suppliers to continue to test for these compounds. And then through contractors, we were able to analyze some of the small water supply systems. And then working with the state, DEC and DOH, we were able to do some private well sampling as well. So we do have a fairly good occurrence database, which maybe a lot of other states don't have just yet for the PFAS compounds. So the Fed is giving public water suppliers 3 years to do the monitoring before 2027. And then provide the data to the public beginning in 2027. And then public water suppliers will have until 2029, so an additional 2 years essentially, to reduce levels below the MCL through well replacement. And then this is from the federal documents, treatment with granular activated carbon, reverse osmosis or ion exchange treatment. And then they'll be required to do public notification for maximum contaminant level exceedances in 2029. And then again, those compliances, based on what we're reviewing, I should really caveat all of this. This is all based on our review of the documents that have been released as part of the announcement and our understanding of those documents. These have not been published in the Federal Register as of yet, to my knowledge. So then,
Jason, could I ask a question?
yes.
That below 4 parts per trillion, you can't really test below that amount, correct?
So
That's the lowest amount that testing can occur.
that's what the federal government is saying, the methods that they have, outlined for this. They want to see that as their minimum reporting level. In New York State, we've been seeing around 2 parts per trillion as our minimum reporting level. That's what our laboratory uses. I've seen some contract labs able to go slightly lower than that.
But we're pushing the envelope of what it is we can even detect.
These
Getting
are
close to it.
extremely low concentrations, to the point that originally when we started testing for these, working with the state, we were given advice to make sure that our staff washed our clothes at least 7 times. If they were new clothes, wash them at least 7 times before we go out and collect a sample wearing those clothes, because they were afraid it was going to off gas and impact the analytical results from the sample.
So can you talk a little bit about how the MCLs were set? In other words, the 10 and the 4? Were they based on observed health impacts at those concentrations? Or were they based on observed health impacts at higher concentrations and interpolated back to the origin?
I don't know that answer for certain. The county doesn't set the drinking water standards. We don't have the authority. That's just the federal and the state government. I know at the state level, you could go back and you could review the Drinking Water Quality Council presentations. And I know that they had technical staff doing presentations and talking about how they develop these thresholds and incorporating uncertainty factors. But, it'd be best to defer you back to the Drinking Water Quality Council regarding the state regulations. The federal documentation, I haven't had an opportunity to review that myself to see how they set these.
Okay, another question is, has anybody looked at the most popular bottled water products and tested them for these substances?
Yes. Yes. So our staff have collected bottled water surveillance samples. To my knowledge, I don't believe that we've seen detections of the PFOS, PFOA. I could confirm that, but that was my last recollection in talking to the staff several months ago.
Okay, and third question is, do you see any difference between the contamination levels you're picking up in public water supply wells versus private wells?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
In other words, you've been sampling both public water supply sources.
Yes.
And of course, there are, 30,000 private wells in the county. Shelter Island, other than a few small areas, is mostly private wells. Have you seen any difference in the incidence of PFAs in public water supply wells versus private wells?
Have I seen any difference? That's a
Yeah.
challenging question.
That's a one.
Initially, the only data that we had was related to the public water supply as part of that unregulated contaminant monitoring rule list 3 sampling, and it was very limited. The water suppliers weren't able to test down very low at that time. I think they were monitoring down to 40 and 20 parts per trillion. And now we're looking down to around 2 parts per trillion. So we're seeing more. So initially, what started our private well surveys was looking at our public water supply well data and then seeing, okay, where's those swap maps? Where are we seeing that water come from? And then if the public supply well was impacted, we would assume that there was a contamination source in that sort of modeled contributing area. And then we went out a little bit further than that. Because those contributing models can change depending on precipitation and how much that well pumps. They're estimations. So then we identified that private wells that could be within those contributing zones to the impacted public supply wells. So in order to make that correlation, that would be, challenging. We've done the same thing with our non-community water suppliers when we, started looking at it from them. We might have seen detection just over a drinking water standard, and then we look maybe across the street and we see 100 or 1,000 parts per trillion in a private well. It all depends on where those wells are screened, and then are they in the path of that PFAS plume. So I hope that, I attempted to answer your question. I hope that helped.
I have one more question. If a homeowner wants to, because the PFAS isn't part of the combination testing that you do right now for $100 per homeowner, or is it?
PFAS is.
Yes. Okay, if somebody wanted to test simply for PFAS, how much would that cost a homeowner?
So through us, it's still a $100 fee, and we're going to do our comprehensive set. If you go out to a contract laboratory, and if people reach out to us, and I think my last slide has our phone number, you can reach out to us. We'll provide you the names and numbers for a couple of local contract laboratories that you can reach out to. We're hearing estimates of somewhere in the range of $500, give or take, just to do PFAS.
And that would be a panel of PFAS, correct?
Yeah, that would be a panel, don't quote me on the number, 20 something roughly.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Right. So what have we, the Suffolk County Health Department, what have we done in response to PFAS? Well, we've provided public water suppliers with information and technical support regarding sampling, applicable methods, information about the regulations that are coming down the pipe to ensure compliance. We've also, our engineers have reviewed the plans and specifications for new infrastructure, whether that was a new supply well to replace one that was impacted, a new treatment system, maybe a new emerging treatment technology to treat for PFAS. I know right now we're evaluating anion exchange resin with Suffolk County Water Authority. And then new water main extensions. So we've done a number of private well surveys, and we've identified contamination, and then water suppliers or municipalities have reached out and secured funding to pay for a large portion of those water main extension costs. I want to say up to 60% has been provided through some state grant funding for impacted public supply well, or sorry, private supply wells to connect to public water. Our laboratory, as I mentioned last year, we developed the in-house testing capability for PFAS. We use methods 533, and we also have the capability to run the PFAS samples under 537.1. We're out collecting samples from public supplies and private wells. We're inspecting and sampling the public water supply annually. We coordinate with the state agencies, State Department of Health and State Department of Environmental Conservation regularly regarding contamination and evaluation of potential sources. And then we did those private well surveys, groundwater investigations, and surface water sampling in areas where there's a concern. And then based on a lot of the work that we've done, it's resulted in several Superfund and potential Superfund site designations, including several examples here. So in 2016, after this federal government changed the health advisory levels from like 400 and 200, I think, for PFAS and PFOA down to 70 parts per trillion combined, we started doing a lot of survey work and investigation work on PFAS. So since that point in 2016, we've initiated about 60 different surveys across the county. We've collected over 1,700 samples in priority areas where we believed PFAS contamination was going to be present. About 19% of those wells exceeded the current maximum contaminant levels in New York State for PFOS or PFOA. We've done.
Sorry, when you say current, you mean the ones that were just put out last week, or the ones that were, 50 to 70?
So what I say is current New York State PFAS, PFOA, MCLs. That means the 10.
Okay.
From what we're reading with the federal regulations, those MCLs won't become effective, we believe, until 2029, 5 years after they become effective. I think it's like, let's say it's published in the Federal Register at the end of the month. Let's say April, I guess it would probably be May 1st. It would be effective 60 days after that. But then the enforcement of the maximum contaminant levels wouldn't be until 5 years later, the way that we interpret the announcement from the EPA.
Thanks.
Yes. So we say current, this is what's enforceable right now. The New York State MCLs at 10. So about 19%. We did a quick assessment of some of these wells, and based on those federal requirements, 5 years down the road, based on the data we had before us and a real quick preliminary assessment, we think about maybe an extra 20% would exceed those federal standards. If we identify contamination above these state standards, we advise the state DEC and state health department, and then state DEC on a case-by-case basis has offered alternate water supplies. Initially, it might be bottled water, and then they may offer a POET system that we talked about earlier if public water connection is not available. And then based on a lot of our survey work, as I said, there's been public water main extensions and connection projects and several different hamlets, and many, many more are expected. And,
So you're suggesting that you're saying that Suffolk County offers to provide bottled water or treatment systems to these homeowners, the 19% that we're exceeding?
So on a.
Couldn't connect to public water?
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis, the state DEC, working with the state health department, has offered alternate water supply, including bottled water, poets.
Directly
public
to
water
individuals. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, so
And
we
that's not
coordinate
just
with
with-
them and they make that decision.
That's not just with PFAS, that's been the case for the town, for instance, at the senior center where we had an MTB problem. The state DEC actually provided a treatment system for the town.
They paid for the treatment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there-
Jason, how do you decide what private wells you're going to test? Is it a request from homeowners or is it random?
We
Is you-
do, yeah, we do about 800 to 1,000 private well samples per year. We have a dedicated team to do private well samples. It goes up and down, whether they're requests or surveys. It depends on how large of a survey we implement that year. It may be dependent on the response rate that we get. So if a lot of homeowners are interested, so that may defer some of the private well requests that we get in. So it's all resource dependent. And the requests, we typically get a surge around this time of year with a lot of the seasonal folks start coming out to their homes, opening up their homes, and they want to get in the queue to try to get their well sampled before they come out for the summer season. So we typically get an uptick right about now.
Okay.
So this is our phone number, and I give our general phone number again at the end of the presentation. It's 631-852-5810. All right, let's talk about Shelter Island water supplies specifically. So your community water supply, so the quote unquote the bigger water suppliers serving places where people reside, people live year round, and then our typically smaller non-community water supply systems. And then finally, private wells. The Shelter Island community water suppliers, we're aware of 5 that we regulate on the island, the smallest of which is King's Cottages. They have 1 well, they serve about, give or take, 7 people. We recently had PFOS confirmed exceedance of the New York State standard at 10. And right now, they just, at the end of last month, I think, initiated public notification for that while they work, towards installation of a treatment system, presumably. Happy Groundhog is another one. They have 1 well, serve about 15 people. Deering Harbor Water District, 3 wells, about 72 people. West Neck Water District, 3 wells, about 195 people. And Shelter Island Heights property owners, 5 wells, about 500 people. There's about 35 non-community public water supply systems with about 43 wells on Shelter Island. These are just some of the water quality things that we've detected recently. And again, I caution you, these is an untreated water samples. So we've seen exceedances in the raw water for PFAS or PFOA at Quackles Harbor Marina, and they're currently posted while they pursue treatment. Deering Harbor Inn, they have a couple wells on site, but the blended water, so the water from another well on site, combined with this 1 raw water from this other well, and the blended water going out to the consumers did not exceed. And that well that was impacted by the PFAS has since been removed from service. Gardner's Bay Country Club, they do have PFOA treatment installed. 2 South Ferry Bed and Breakfast, PFAS treatment's been installed. And Eccentric Bagel also has PFAS treatment installed. Iron and manganese in untreated water samples. And this is just over the last couple of years. Deering Harbor Inn, it was the same well. They had elevated detection of iron, but the blended water going out to the consumer did not exceed the standard. And that well has since been removed from service. Shelter Island Senior Center had an iron manganese treatment installed. Shelter Island Town Hall is currently posted for iron over the standard. Shelter Island Public Library is posted for iron. And Ellie's Country Store has a manganese treatment system installed. Chloride, Camp Quinnipiac last year, and again, this is just based on recent data. They were posted for chlorides in early 2023, and that was lifted late last year. We've seen this in the past before at Camp Quinnipiac, and I think they're just sort of near the shoreline. If there's a lot of water usage earlier in the year, maybe, getting ready or flushing, or cleaning things, you're going to see, these saltwater interfaces move in, and you're going to see an elevated chloride concentrations. That's what we've experienced over there, we believe, a few times in the past. Nitrate exceedances. Maria's Kitchen is currently posted for nitrates. Our private well sampling summary. This I went a little bit further. The staff pulled out the last 10 years worth of data that was readily available. We've done 375 private well samples on Shelter Island at 155 unique addresses. So this is the total number of samples, pre and post treatment. So when we go out and we collect a sample, we don't just give you, what you're consuming or what's in your raw water. For that $100 fee, or as part of a private well survey, we're trying to do pre and post treatment to show you what you're consuming or what you have to be maybe concerned about in your raw water prior to treatment. We've also done repeat sampling. If there was a bacteria issue, we'll go back out and try to confirm that after the homeowner indicates that they've disinfected their well. And then several homeowners may have also requested sampling in that 10-year period on more than one occasion. I would hope so, because we recommend annual sampling. So we've seen in this data set 15 nitrate exceedances at 8 of the properties, 8 of the addresses, up to 13.8. Just to give you a frame of reference, the maximum contaminant level is 10 parts per million. There were 20 iron exceedances at 14 different locations, up to 29.4. The maximum contaminant level for iron is 0.3 parts per million. There were 20 manganese exceedances at 20 locations, up to 20.42 parts per million, and the MCL is 0.3. 6 chloride exceedances at 5 different locations, up to 508 parts per million, and the MCL is less than half that at 250 parts per million. And we've seen bacteria detections. Our bacteriologists at the Public Environmental Health Laboratory, they look for total coliform bacteria, which we consider an indicator organism. Not all coliform bacteria are harmful to us, but they're used as an indicator to let us know, hey, there is something wrong here. Properly installed and constructed wells and maintained systems should not have coliform in Suffolk County. So we've seen in this data set 59 positive total coliform samples at 26 locations and 8 positive E. coli samples at 5 locations. Now, E. coli is a public health concern. This is something that could infect your gastrointestinal system, and you could become very ill from E. coli. E. coli is associated with warm-blooded animal feces.
So I would just point out that if you could go back to that slide for just a second.
Yes.
I would just point out that this clearly does reflect repeat testing because you have 155 unique addresses and 375 private well samples. So 155 homes were tested over the course of 10 years, mostly twice, or on average twice, or slightly over twice. But this is an extremely small number of samples as compared to the population of Shelter Island over the course of that 10 years. Very few people are testing.
Yeah, we would certainly encourage
More testing
on private wells to reach out and take advantage of our programs. I mean, it's a $100 fee. It's a comprehensive analysis, and we provide you technical guidance and information based on your analytical results. So if we see an iron or a manganese, our public health sanitarian staff will provide guidance to the homeowner on what types of treatment system they may want to install and what are the potential health effects of
my assumption
exposure.
My assumption is that most of these tests were new construction.
No, new construction is typically
requests?
done by contractors because they want to get a quick turnaround on the analytical results.
I see.
You know, it takes a little bit of time, you know, maybe a few weeks for us to schedule a private well request and then sampling event, and then it may take, you know, 2 months or more to be able to get the analytical results, depending on how busy our laboratory is.
If I may, Jason, that has been one complaint, is the amount of time it takes for the health department to come and actually do this sampling.
You know-
When I personally have advised homeowners to get samples, that's one of the responses that I've gotten.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
The
appreciate.
results.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. That may have been a time where maybe one of our staff retired and we were working on replacing that staff. We do have a sanitarian supervisor that's in charge of this program. She spends some of her time in the field and then, you know, some of her time here coordinating with the state agencies and, you know, getting letters out to homeowners and speaking to homeowners. And then we have one dedicated field staff and another field staff that sort of splits their time between the non-community program and our private well sampling program. So I think we're doing a lot better than we may have in the past. So I would encourage people to reach out to us and, you know, get an update on how long that's going to take. And again, we get a big influx this time of year. So you may call in 2 weeks and we say, geez, it may take us, you know, 3 to 4 weeks to get out to you. Whereas if you called in January, it may have been next week or, you know, more than 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that for us as representatives of the town to confidently suggest that people get their testing, if there was sort of a parameter of turnaround time that you could say, it could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, just some sort of a parameter that we could confidently tell homeowners. Or do you not want to say that?
If it's okay, I'd like to just speak to my staff and just confirm what they could commit to. I wouldn't want to mislead you in any way.
Okay.
You know, we have staff vacation schedules and, you know, if someone's out at the laboratory or if we have a major investigation or a private well survey that we're initiating, that may take precedence over private well requests because that's an area where we believe there could be groundwater contamination and we may prioritize that sampling effort. So there will be a range, and what that range is, that, you know, I wouldn't want to mislead you today.
Well, Jason, speaking from experience, I know that it takes more than 4 weeks because I sent you my check on the 14th of March. And I haven't gotten my water sampled yet.
Okay. Yeah, this is a tough time of year. I do appreciate your patience. It is well discounted. So yeah, I think you're going to be happy with the results.
Price.
The price.
Right.
Yes, it is.
So just a little piece on private well sampling summary for Shelter Island. We just got the PFAS capability and started doing private well samples routinely last year. I think middle of last year, late last year. So that reflects a large number of these 43 locations that were sampled. We did not have in this data set any private well PFOS MCL exceedances of the state reg. There was one location that was right at the drinking water standard, and we still notify the state DEC and DOH of these detections. For PFOA, there was one MCL exceedance at 34 parts per trillion, and a second location that was right at the MCL, the state MCL.
43.
We were part of the.
Right. So these are sort of my, you know, bring it all together, Jason, you know, take us home. What are the take home messages here? The Suffolk County aquifer system is vulnerable, especially in the unsewered areas where if we pour something down the drain or flush something down the toilet, including those pharmaceutical personal care products or, you know, toxic chemicals, those are going to go down into our aquifer and impact our water supply. Or out into our surface water bodies and our estuaries. Many of our contaminants of concern are soluble and mobile and persistent and toxic that we look for. The health department does conduct routine monitoring of the aquifer quality with our groundwater sampling teams, our drill teams. We want to make sure that residents are supporting those local stop programs, stop throwing out pollutants programs, and bringing those, old paints and old gasoline, old, oven cleaners. I see some finger pointing. I hope that's all good finger pointing. Let's support these things. And supporting those pharmaceutical take-back programs, because we want to keep this stuff out of our vulnerable and sensitive aquifers. The public water supply, it generally meets the standards. We're not there notifying the public so they can, the actions that they can take and what actions the water suppliers are taking themselves. The public supply is regulated, tested by the health department. We are audited by the state and the federal government. They've come down and they've evaluated our program to make sure that we're doing our job. The public supply wells are typically going to be deeper. They are continually monitored and treated as needed. Water suppliers, in my experience, I like being, the big bad regulator, especially with water supply, because they share our concerns. They want to deliver the best quality water possible. They're a lot of times going to be proactive, and they're going to be taking action to try to mitigate exposure in advance of regulations. And the maximum contaminant levels, the state has told us in the past that they're generally set conservatively low with some margin of safety. Private wells are inherently vulnerable to contamination. They're going to be closer to potential contamination sources. Health Department has a private well sampling request and survey programs. We recommend that people test their private wells annually. And then maintain your on-site filtration systems. It's not good enough to just install it, but you can actually see water quality problems from filtration systems if they're not maintained properly, or if you're putting in a filtration system that's not the appropriate filtration system, you could all of a sudden be causing an issue. Or if you're not getting properly third-party certified filtration system, something that's, just like Underwriters Laboratories with our electrical equipment, there's something like that. It's called NSF, or Water Quality Association Gold Seal, for filtration systems too. And we encourage people to connect to public water where and when possible, and that DOH and DEC at the state may be able to provide assistance under certain circumstances. And that's my presentation. This is our number again. If anyone out there has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We have a great team of engineers, sanitarians, hydrogeologists, and other technical support staff that would be happy to speak to you. And that number is 631-852-5810.
I do have, oh, I'm sorry, Andrew.
So Andrew first and then Lisa.
Okay, so if you think about the history of
And we could drop this so that we can see.
water quality contamination regulation in this country. You go back to at least in my world, you go back to 1986 and you have the Safe Drinking Water Act amendments that came in, and they really got into chlorine byproducts and so forth. And that triggered a whole lot of investment in surface water treatment plants and so forth, and raised rates and got the industry all in an uproar. Okay. Then more recently, you have the MTBE issue, which was viewed as, wow, this chemical is everywhere. It travels really fast, and it's going to be a huge problem. It was banned, and the incidence of MTBE, it's not zero, but it's certainly gotten better over the last several years. Now you have this. So and by this I mean the PFAS. Is this an earth-shattering event like the 1986 Safe Drinking Water Act amendments? Or is this more like MTBEs and the industry will absorb it, swallow it, deal with it, and we'll march on?
That's a difficult question. I'll look into my crystal ball and I'll see. But no, I think PFAS, I think that this is unique. We're going down and we're testing to part per trillion levels. You saw some of those drinking water standard exceedances at the nitrates and the manganese, iron. We were looking at part per million. So take part per million and then go down to part per billion. That's 1,000 times smaller. Now we're going to part per trillion. That's like a million times smaller than those part per million concentrations. So now we're down at 4 parts per trillion for just 2 of these, and there's thousands of them out there. I think I'm going to be busy for my last 12 plus years in Suffolk County Health Department working on PFAS. I don't think that this is going to go away anytime soon. I think that there's going to need to be some considerable investment in this.
Product.
Yeah, I think that there was probably a lot of PFAS compounds out there, and then they were replaced maybe with new PFAS compounds as they learned maybe these were hazardous or potentially hazardous. So I think that we're going to be chasing this for a while. And then what are they replacing the PFAS with today?
So you're saying this is a big deal?
Yeah, I believe this is, yes.
Yeah, a big deal
Long
and
term.
at very, very minute contaminations of the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lisa, actually, you were next.
Yeah, can we just go back to the GAC filtration systems? You noted that they can be installed in houses.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, the disposal and the intensity, what is the disposal? Like, for example, a reverse osmosis system, inefficient reverse osmosis systems have a large quantity of water that is intensely nutrient rich, if you will, or contaminant rich that goes back into the ground. How do you, with a GAC system, how do you dispose of that filtration? What does a homeowner do with it?
So,
Am I being clear?
yes.
I think you are.
Okay, I
Yes.
just wanted.
Well, there's a lot to that, and there's been some concern about it and some discussion by the federal government and the regulatory groups up there, because they have this regulation where they're concerned about contamination cradle to grave, right? So now, if water suppliers or even homeowners are taking and they're adsorbing organic contaminants, including PFAS, onto a carbon cell, okay, so you send that out, do you landfill that? Can you reactivate it? Are there reactivation facilities that are willing to accept that? Is there something else on that carbon that can make that or consider that to be hazardous? And they have to dispose of it. I think, based on talking to some of the folks in the industry, that more often than not, you're going to be able to reactivate the granular activated carbon that has PFOS and PFOA.
But currently, they're going to,
There's nothing on the EPA.
they're going, I'm sorry,
Nothing on the EPA book. Disposal.
nothing for disposal. Okay, thank
So
you.
So where does it go?
I
Landfill.
believe the carbon companies are accepting it, and they may be regenerating it and selling it maybe to environmental remediation projects. As a reactivated carbon. We're also reviewing a proposal from water suppliers to use reactivated carbon, once around again. They reactivate it, they heat these things up, and it destroys the PFAS. It's up over the level where they would be able to, those chemical bonds would be able to survive, and then, use it again in potable water systems. And if there's any destruction of the carbon through the handling and, or, reheating it, then they would make that up with virgin carbon. And then they'd be able to fill another vessel back up and reuse that carbon.
Can homeowners access that today?
That I'm not sure about. I
Right.
believe that
Yeah.
it should be probably all virgin carbon right now.
Our councilwoman wants to, no, she does.
I have a different question. I don't have an answer to that, whether we can recycle. I have a different question.
But there is, it is an important question. We don't necessarily have to answer it today, but it's speaks to, we have somebody here who's involved in installing filtration systems. It speaks to the maintenance programs and what maintenance program, what is real world maintenance now and what should it be or what's achievable. But we have short time. So Meg, did you want?
Hi, Jason, it's Meg Larson. I have a data question for you.
Sure.
The Department of Health receives a tremendous amount of water test results from private entities, like, people have to do a health department permit, so they have to get a water test as part of their permitting process. Are you guys working on creating a database of that information as well as the samples that you yourselves take and run? Or, I mean, it's a tremendous lift to try to do that, but I'm just wondering if you have that kind of in the works.
That's an interesting concept. I had not considered that. Right now, what happens is our Office of Wastewater Management, it's a separate office, they're upstairs. They get these reports back from the contract laboratories. If there's a maximum contaminant level exceedances, they may bring that down to us, discuss what type of treatment we would recommend, if it's treatable. And then they'll work with the homeowner to put a covenant on that, and then ensure the treatment's there, and then follow-up samples are collected. And then it would be up to the homeowner to request additional samples, either through us or through a contractor. If it was through us, it would be incorporated in our database, as you said. Those initial data sets as part of construction. No one is exposed to that water at the time of sampling, so I don't have that in a database right now. But it's an interesting thing. Let me talk about that with my administration and my staff.
Yeah, because it's a tremendous wealth of data. I mean, there's so much information in there, especially since you guys started requiring full comprehensive water tests with new wells, so it includes the PFAS data too. So it might, especially for a place like Shelter Island, where every application is accompanied by well test data, I think it would give you a pretty comprehensive view of what's going on.
So Jason, if I may, you may know, you may not know that we recently completed a nitrogen and coliform testing program in our center area, about 500 homes. One of the principal testers involved is here in the room as well. We're interested in extending our testing program to the near shore areas, both because we've tested our center area already, gotten a sense of what's out there, at least in terms of nitrogen and coliform. And we have obviously many people concerned about saltwater intrusion as issues. In addition, we're mindful that what is in the center is moving outward toward the near shore. We don't know to what degree it has reached that, but the near shore area is therefore between the rock and the hard place of nitrogen contamination and septic contamination and saltwater intrusion. So we're very interested in creating a program broadly testing the near shore area. What I'm wondering is, and we'd love to work with the health department on doing so. And we would be willing to consider a program to finance some larger number of homeowners to test, latitudinally, at one time across the island. So I'm interested in your sense of your capacity. If we were to say have 500 homeowners interested in that $100 test, potentially financed by perhaps by our Water Quality Improvement Project Fund or through other means, town means, would you guys be able to handle that? Would that be an elephant that the snake is struggling to digest?
Well, I mean, I think anything, could be done with time and money, right? That's anything.
That's true.
We could build pyramids if we wanted to. Over what time frame are you thinking for the 500?
Well, we're eager to move forward as quickly as we could possibly do, and that partly depends on this conversation with you, with your group. And obviously, we also have to have internal discussions with our, own committees as to how funding and town board as to how funding would work for that. But it seems well within, given the monies we've already put into testing, then our center triangle testing was, I believe, $85 per sample, and that was just a test of nitrogen and coliform. So from our point of view, this is very well within what the kinds of work we've been doing. And, you know, we have ongoing to programs with the USGS and so forth, but
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I'd love to discuss that more with the town and the council. Let me speak to my administration and my staff and see what we think we can do. I mean, if we're already committing a certain percentage of our capability to Shelter Island requesters for
it
the
could be more
$100 fee,
efficient.
Yeah.
Could be very efficient because you'd have, you know, just spend some time on the island and then, you know, do it in beautiful weather when it's nice to be here.
Yeah, this is certainly our peak season. It's when everyone, you know, with all of our seasonal non-community water suppliers are operating their businesses, making their money. So we're out inspecting and sampling them. The peak wells that the water districts put on only during the summer months. That's when they come on. We have to sample those. We're doing, you know, with the nice weather, we're also doing a lot of groundwater investigations, taking advantage. So, you know, I know that there is a seasonal component to the Shelter Island population. I know that this would be probably an opportune time.
Well, this might be an opportune time, but we may be ahead of the curve because we don't have, you know, these programs set up on our end. And, you know, I'm just throwing it out to you right now. But it's beautiful on Shelter Island in the fall too. And I'm going to take a question from the audience here. Yeah, Jan.
Can I speak?
You can just speak. I mean, I don't think that we're making, unless you have a speech.
So I have a question for Jason, because regarding treatment of FPOA or FPOS, there are small systems that I read about, kind of point of use under the kitchen sink, sort of similar, just for drinking water, similar to reverse osmosis filters people install to deal with nitrates in drinking water. Could you comment on that?
So my understanding was if we had concerns about PFOS or PFOA, could we do a point of use filtration system similar to a reverse osmosis? The state health department has indicated that reverse osmosis could be effective. It was in the EPA documentation. I personally, I don't have data to show that it would be effective long-term. You know, I assume it could be, but I don't know. You know, we typically like to have things designed to operate for a year before you need to do some sort of maintenance or change things out. So you'd have enough media present. I don't know how much media would be present and how much maintenance would be required to ensure that that would consistently provide you with water that gets down below the maximum contaminant levels. And with point of use filtration, you know, there are some obviously disadvantages. So you don't have the ability to use that water and comply with the drinking water standard at all of your taps. So if you had a 2-story house and you had a bathroom and a kitchen down on the first floor and a bathroom on the second floor, maybe near some bedrooms, you know, and you get up in the middle of the night, you know, you wouldn't get the benefit of the treatment in the kitchen tap from your tap upstairs. So depending on the contaminant, depending on the recommended treatment device, you know, we'd certainly encourage more towards a whole house filtration system where possible. Obviously for things like chlorides where you need a reverse osmosis system, that would be a simple point of use.
And I would point out just for everybody that reverse osmosis will be putting that contaminant directly back into the aquifer.
Some of it.
Intensified.
Do backwash, you say?
The whole point of reverse osmosis filtration, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, please.
The PFAS will be caught in the pre-carbon filter. There's a sediment and a carbon filter going to the reverse osmosis membrane. PFAS will be caught in that carbon filter before it reaches the membrane and not released back in.
So then it's just a question of maintenance and disposal.
Disposal.
Correct.
And maintenance, basically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
I got a question. In your presentation, it sounds as though, considering the direction of these new things getting into our drinking water, currently called PFOSs and PFOAs, and in there you had mentioned that from like a long-term standpoint, you really recommend for communities to really explore public water for the standpoint of maybe really being able to have a good system, because this is not going to go away. This is a long-term issue we have. And so with us here on Shelter Island, we're still doing basically flushing and drinking about out of the same pool. And with the installation of advanced systems to help a little bit on the nitrate side, doing nothing really on the PFOA side that I know of. Is there any work been done in studying the long-term cost effectiveness of multiple AI systems and under-the-counter systems in home systems, costing and the issues relative to a public water or public sewer methodology for a community like us for a long-term issue with our single source aquifer?
Have there been any
Work done in analyzing this area?
work done evaluating the benefits of IAs and the costs associated with that versus the costs of a public water supply? Did I get that right?
Over the long run, basically.
You're looking for a study, right?
Yeah, a study. There have been, we have X number of homes in the center that should require the same amount of, advanced systems for septic. And then you have every one of those possibly requiring some kind of a methodology to remove PFOSs and PFOAs. And we have the issue of the continued contamination of these using that technology versus public systems for both septic and water.
I think that Ken is looking for cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, the cost benefit would be,
Of public approaches
Public,
versus
yeah.
private approaches to both the drinking water and the wastewater issues. So a general sense or direction in terms of literature search, but
I'm not aware of anything specifically that would address, I think, what you're looking for. I know that the county, our Office of Ecology, is working on a long-term monitoring plan, evaluating the effectiveness of some of the initiatives related to the IA systems and, additional sewering projects over the next several decades. And I think that we're anticipating looking at emerging contaminants as part of that. But there's nothing that I'm aware of that I think addresses your specific question.
well, we're looking for any kind of information you might have, basically from a long-term planning standpoint, in essence, as to what's best for our island community, in particularly places that have a little bit higher concentration of population.
And what was it? Long-term planning studies comparing.
Yeah,
public and private, you did in one of your slides suggest that where possible, people should hook up to public water supplies.
that was one of your things that struck me
Suggesting
on this,
that
is
public
you
water
looked at it.
supplies have some advantages over
Right.
private solutions.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the policy of the Article 4 of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code. That's just good public health policy. It puts, the sampling, the maintenance, all in the hands of water treatment professionals that are certified through the state health department. They're routinely tested. They may be tested monthly for certain parameters. And then they have the oversight, whereas a private well, it's, as I said before, it's drink at your own risk after you get that, approval from the health department, but that water quality can change as contaminants could, migrate down into the aquifer and then move through with the water.
And we know from your data that over the course of 10 years, there are only 375 requests from homeowners on Shelter Island for testing. So we're pretty bad, we're pretty non-vigilant as compared to professional water suppliers.
Yeah.
in and out.
Yeah, I would think there's another portion that are getting testing done by contractors, but I'm certain it's not 100% every year.
Or regular. Look, I'm chair of the Water Advisory Committee, and I can't claim to be testing every year my water. Perhaps I should be, but I drink bottled water. I am interested in the fact that you have found no instances of bottled water contamination with PFAS and PFOA, so that is probably something that maybe some people might want as a takeaway.
Well, can I throw a wrench in his works?
Please do. Well, we're here for that.
Yeah, based on those of us who in West Neck Water District were managed by the Suffolk County Water Department, and they sent out a communique a couple of weeks ago about the presence of nanoplastics in bottled water, which is the new water threat, and we know this in ground and surface water. So it's not a panacea necessarily. It's just a different form of contamination.
That's right.
Just throwing that out there.
Particularly, individual bottled, purchasing small size bottles. And anyway. Okay, so thank you, Jason. Is anyone online or anybody have any further questions for Jason?
I got one quick question. Currently, I believe that if a municipal water supply finds if the MCL goes over a particular well, 10 parts per trillion, the water supplier has the option to essentially send out a notification to all the customers, which waives their ability to fix or mitigate immediately. It gives them 3 years, I think, as you stated in one of your slides, to take care of correcting the PFAS annual numbers, if you will. Is that waiver that municipal water suppliers, is that still in effect? Will that stay in effect until 2029 or whenever we get this new threshold? In other words, if West Neck Water well is 9 or 10.6, the residents will get notification that our water has been found to be above the PFAS threshold. Is that true? Is that still in effect?
So I think what you're referring to is when State Health Department came out with their regulation in August 2020. They said, public water suppliers obviously need some time to be able to put the treatment systems online. The lead time on some of these large granular activated carbon vessels may be a year. And you need to get plans reviewed and approved by the health department. Some water suppliers may need to be able to go out to bid, get a design consultant to do some of this work in order to, make application to the health department. They may need to secure grant funding, identify a new funding source. And then COVID was right around that time period, right? So there was supply chain disruptions. So based on all of these factors, the State Health Department offered a 2-year MCL deferral for the enforcement. And then there was an extra year of time that you could apply beyond that. So a few of the water suppliers, several of the major water suppliers took advantage of that. They did public notification to advise the residents in accordance with the requirements, what the levels were and what they were doing to mitigate that. That's expired now. We're beyond that 3-year time frame for the state regulation. The federal regulation, it seems like it's built right in. There's not the way it reads to us right now, based on the materials that we've reviewed from the EPA announcement. It appears that the effective date won't be until 2029. So that would give water suppliers the opportunity to test, if they don't already have the data, which ours do, and then determine if they are going to exceed, and then start making those plans to put in the treatment before the MCLs become enforceable, meaning, public notification, get on a compliance schedule, and maybe there's an order on consent that's signed with one of the health departments.
So it does sound like that's quite a long horizon, as 2029 is 5 years out, so.
Hmm.
So,
Okay, thank you.
Jan, did you have another question?
Yeah, would it be possible to post the complete presentation on the WAC
I
website?
would hope so. Yeah, Jason, are we allowed to post your presentation?
So I believe this is recorded, right? So you're posting the recording?
The recording is available, yes, so your presentation is, I think that Jan may be referring to the PowerPoint.
Or the PowerPoint itself? I don't see why not, but I would just need to double check on that.
Okay. All right, let us know. I think it's a good
That's a
suggestion,
good
Jan.
suggestion.
Yeah. Okay, so quite a bit, we're into a little bit of overtime. We have a few quick items of business. Jason, thank you so much.
Yes,
And
thank you,
again,
David.
yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
Very helpful.
You're welcome. I appreciate your time today, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
We should make it an annual event.
Yes.
Yes.
Like getting your water.
Exactly, Greg.
Well, yes, at least 10.
Reach out to us anytime.
Okay, so committee members, I would just like
Dave
to,
Ruby has. a
oh,
question.
Dave? Oh, Dave, I think has a thumbs up. I think that
Oh,
was
is that a
not a
thumbs
hands
up?
up, but a thumbs up. He was like, thank you.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Dave. We have a May 5th public information presentation at the library. Greg had done a lot of initial brainstorming, put out a lot of ideas. I think that the task was now to really narrow it down so that we have a presentation that the public can cope with. Lisa was happy to do PowerPoint work on it.
Right, so if you're going to, oh, I have a couple of questions. Can I ask them now?
Go for it.
I had asked Joe if there'd been any public response to the letter,
Mhm.
and he said,
Up to me.
not to you. Meg,
I have not heard a peep,
Okay.
okay.
0 peeps.
So I'm wondering at the efficacy of having a public meeting, should we just go ahead with it anyway? And if we do, if you're going to open and lead the meeting, would you please send me the information for the opening slides? I have the information that Greg Toner had given me for the actual presentation. So unless you want to open without slides,
What do you mean the opening?
like introduction. This is why we're here. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, you know what, this week, this is coming up, so let me turn my attention to that presentation and I'll connect with you about
Okay.
all the things.
Right, and I think Andrew certainly has been deeply involved in the presentation of the
Okay.
information. I would like to be, I think that with this conversation should be a conversation among, all of us. Anyway, go ahead, Andrew.
So I've been concerned that when that letter goes out, recipients will want to understand the public health, or the health implications to them
Right.
of the water they are potentially drinking, or they are drinking if they participated in the test, or could be drinking if they live in the neighborhood, got the letter, but didn't have their water tested. So how are we going to handle those kinds of questions?
So, we have developed a fair amount of information about what studies show. And we've stuck to by your suggestion, we stuck to the brackets of 0 to 5 milligrams nitrogen, 5 to 10 milligrams, beyond 10 milligrams. So we can pretty knowledgeably speak to what the literature says. And I know that where it's science speak often, and yet I think that we can become good at stating without overstating what it means that there's an association, what it means that what the studies showed in specific cases. We have collected up those studies at this point. We have numbers.
So we're not likely to have an epidemiologist there. It'll be us.
It'll be us. Yeah, I haven't reached out to anyone other than,
Jason.
who we just heard from, but I think the purpose of this would be, yeah, for us as a township to present the results, yeah.
And Suffolk County Health Department will not give us any other correlative health implication information other than blue baby syndrome, because that is what's been proven, it's evidentiary. They won't come out against other studies that are correlative to different types of cancer, for example. They're just, that's their standard, that's the state standard. So it's the county standard. We could ask them, like we could have tried Jason, but that's their position. That's not gonna change at this point. So anything that we say outside of that solid evidentiary information is coming from other studies that have been done, numerous, as Peter said, but they're only correlative.
Right,
not
and it's
causative.
really important for us to, as in our role, it's important for us to explain correlation does not determine causality. There's, right?
Yep.
So it's not, the correlations are not theoretical, they're fact. That's what the correlation showed in this study, in this study, in this study. What that means, is that there is an association which is unknown what's causing it exactly, but you should know there are these associations.
Okay, and we're going to speak to that, or
I
somebody.
think I think we're called upon. I mean,
Okay.
our
I mean, that's
community
what the
has
law
asked us to, and I think we do need to be fair and say, look, I do data work, but I'm not a epidemiologist. I have run a public water supply company, but I'm not the technical person on that, at that water supply company. So as fellow citizens, this is when we do our best, and here's what what is.
Okay.
We're really reporting.
We're reporting.
Reporting, right.
Yes, my wife is a journalist, and she knows not to say this is a fact, but so-and-so said, the Minnesota study said, this association, and that's a fact.
And I think the degree to which we make statements is important, so we don't become
Right.
alarmists.
Mhm.
Alarmist.
Just fair statements about what,
What time is the library?
it's 5 o'clock and it's
5
on
o'clock on
Sunday,
Sunday.
the 5th.
Right.
So it was going to be Thursday, but that
Right.
shifted.
5
So
o'clock.
Yes.
The letter did get attention.
Actually,
noticed
I
that.
have to say, I correct, the person I did hear from about the letter was Greg. He said he received it and good job. Yeah.
And it is getting a lot of attention.
Mhm.
Our formal answer is, with all water testing, that test was very minimal. And the question that comes in is, can I drink my water?
Mhm.
And the answer is, Suffolk County has a very, very stringent definition of what potable water means.
That's 10.
You can, out of 110 components, okay, I can't just narrow it up.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely.
So you can call us and we'll have results for you in 14 days. And it's $1,300, or you can pay
$100.
$100 and get online and get twice the data I can provide you in a short period of time.
Mhm.
So as people come in, unless they specifically have a nitrate overage, which was only 6 people, I haven't called. We just tell them to get that $100 test.
Mhm.
And if they'd like some help deciphering it, we're happy to do that. Or send it to health department. The Jason's office is awesome.
Mhm.
They have great people that will go through that test with you.
And you heard me saying that we would like to encourage the public more broadly to do this testing.
Mhm.
And we would like to, for at least a single round of testing, make it free. And just like the center testing that we did with you guys, just tell us that we have to decide who's qualified. I would like that to be nearshore folks, since we haven't addressed their needs yet. And also, I would hope the people who in the center tested in that gray zone, that 5 to 10 milligram zone or higher, I think that they're entitled to know what else is in their water. So for those folks, the 49 or 50, or something like that, homes that showed the 5 to 10 milligram range, and the near shore folks, that they're, all it takes is send back a postcard or go on this, on our website and say, I would like it too. And we, not Water Advisory Committee, since we don't have the budget to do that, but the town, through one of its funding mechanisms, will pay for a larger set of tests.
And I would just say the difficulty in why I would never do that test again for Shelter Island is it was immensely difficult getting access to that many people's homes. I didn't understand the time it was going to take to schedule that with a homeowner. And if I was going to do that test again,
Wouldn't charge $85.
the $85, that was,
Wasn't profit center.
it was unbelievable. And then, a little total call form, people freak out. We have to instruct them how to chlorinate their well, or I go to their house. It's a
Retest.
retest. This is a big undertaking.
No, and also we may not have done this yet, but I will say on our behalf, thank you.
It's good. I signed up for it and I appreciate it, and I will never do it again.
I have a question for you. How many people have called in response to the letter?
12 or 15.
12 or 15?
Oh, that's a healthy response.
Ask for solutions, or what are they?
9% of the time is, oh my God, can I drink my water?
Right.
What does this letter say?
They call about the letter, Greg, or their test results?
Letter.
The letter.
A lot of people didn't even do the test but got the
Letter,
letter.
right, 'cause everybody who was
Yes,
potential.
that was the intent.
That was the intent.
Okay, yeah, so
Everybody that was asked to participate in the test got the letter as a follow-up.
I see.
So
In the
if you
hopes that they
decline,
will test.
Everybody in the center triangle who was invited. got
So if they
the-
call me, it's getting flipped right back.
Hopefully,
852-5810.
Right.
Yes.
yes.
People have done anything about this, though? That's my question.
How many people have, my understanding is that Greg does a good business with filtration systems.
So people that were tested have come back to you and.
I don't think I've sold a single filtration unit based on that test yet.
Okay.
Because it's just a nitrate test. And I can't ethically sell, so, I mean, if their nitrates are off the chart, fine. But if somebody has nitrates at 6 parts, and that's what I'm getting in my public water in Southold, how, right, it's all perspective, so I want them to get a holistic approach and get the big water test, and let's have a bigger conversation.
That's right.
Iron, manganese,
It's-
all the other.
That's right. That's why I want all those 5 to 10 people and everybody in the nearshore area to have available to them. Here's your opportunity. You don't have to do any work, just
Well, the learning
make
experience
sure
for
that-
everybody.
So-
Meg, can I ask a question, a material question here about, will the town put notification in the reporter about this meeting? Or
for the fifth.
do we want to make this public? Because we do want people as much as possible to come.
Yeah,
find
I can
out
talk
is-
to them about putting it in the paper. I
Okay,
mean, we'll definitely put it online. We'll have it on the town website. We'll put it on.
Library.
Facebook, Instagram, the
I'll do a flyer for the
and I
library.
can ask the Jim to put it up on this sign out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the library also sends out their email blast telling you all the
Yeah.
different speakers, so that will go out as well.
As good as you're gonna get.
So, yeah,
Although I don't know, the library has never, Jennifer? Sorry, Jennifer, are you still,
Jessica.
Jessica, I'm sorry, Jessica, do you still work with the library or are you only working with us?
no, that's my sister now.
Oh, okay, it's your sister now that we have to contact to to put the notice in, to put our flyers at the library. But you guys don't, for our library events, it didn't seem to go onto your website, the library website, their website.
E-blasts, not the website.
But it does go in e-blasts, got it. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And,
Okay, so drilling down into the communication,
Mhm.
who is going to be conducting the meeting at the library? Is it Joe? And what's the what's the content of that presentation?
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint that Greg circulated?
He gave the information, I volunteered to actually create the PowerPoint.
Right.
Okay,
And
I don't know if I've seen that
Lisa
yet.
will.
Well, you
and-
haven't, because I haven't done it yet, because I wanted to find out
Feedback.
from Joe if he wanted to do the introduction and make that part of the PowerPoint.
Okay,
So I will endeavor to get that to you this week.
okay, so, I mean, I'm getting into my, going down the rabbit hole of communication,
Right.
which is wanting to be extremely careful and extremely precise
Right.
about what's said and not getting out over our skis in terms of representations about the data or this, that, or the other thing. So having struggled with the draft of that letter
Mhm.
over and over again,
Mhm.
we've got the same task ahead of us with regard to the
Correct.
content of this PowerPoint.
Correct.
Have
It's
you
very
seen
sensitive.
Greg's? Go back in your files,
Yes,
look
I-
at Greg's information, and if there's anything egregious in there you want to correct, let me know, and we'll,
Right,
Just
we
remove
do
it.
have a thread going on this, and I think that it's important now, as we were filtering to you and
Yeah.
to Joe,
Yeah,
I think it's now important to filter to Lisa, our
not everything.
perspectives, comments, and, including all of us, but
Yeah.
Lisa's going to synthesize.
so my reaction to Greg's material
Uh-huh,
was, I didn't go test it, but it struck me as way too much.
correct. That's my comment as well. It needs to be
Okay.
reduced
Not that it
to,
was wrong,
no, it was good
it
material,
was just
but
too
it was,
much.
but that's the right, that's proper for brainstorming.
Right,
And then there's a strong editing, redlining pen. We've given that to Lisa.
Why don't you then come,
you should
come
help.
to me or send me what you think each should,
Okay.
I think there's something, I mean, he said we could do up to 30 slides. No, we will not do up to 30 slides. That's way too much.
Way too much.
10 is max. So
yep,
let's,
with big print.
what do you think is the
Yeah.
most, what is the information that you think that the
Okay.
public will digest
Right,
Right.
that's right.
and walk away with something? And
Yep.
that's, I'll use.
Okay, so
all
that mountain is still to be climbed.
That mountain is to be climbed. And then on your other question, I believe that our sense of this is Joe and Lisa.
No,
That's-
No?
I'm sorry.
Okay?
Joe is going to be the presenter, and I think that Andrew, you guys,
Joe
all
and
I'm doing
Andrew.
is the PowerPoint.
Okay, well, you.
Would that be okay?
That makes you even.
Also, you moved the date on.
Yeah, no, yes.
I didn't know there'd be anything besides the PowerPoint, to be honest. I thought.
To my knowledge, there isn't, but you will say, next slide, please, Lisa, and I'll go to the next slide. That's what I. my role
I
was.
see, okay, yes,
I wasn't going to talk through the slides.
right.
So that's what and then after slide 6, perhaps Andrew would like to take over or something. I don't know, the discussion part of it. No, I think it's really important, though, what you're saying. It needs to flow.
It needs to flow, and I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the letter was hard to write.
Mhm,
And so this is gonna be
mhm,
equal, just as hard to like distill it down. And,
mhm.
this is one of these, Ben Franklin, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter.
Right.
This has got to be really concise.
Would you
It's
like
gotta
me to
flow.
start the PowerPoint?
Sure, that's fine.
Send it to you, and then you can say,
Yeah,
you can redline it.
that's fine.
But include us, but everybody should
Yeah.
understand that we're helping Lisa to redline this down to the tightest possible material.
I thought that letter was fantastic. I actually texted Joe. Because I was terrified about what was gonna come out. I'm so jaded about committee work. But it was awesome. And I don't. I was nervous and it came out very well. And I know you were struggling with length and the town board and back and forth. I watched those meetings and everything. And yeah, I mean, there were, it just seemed to take I really found it informative. I found it speak just to the points that were tested. You know, it wasn't my place to comment on it at all anyway. I just collected the data. But however you did that letter, do that PowerPoint.
Okay, so what I'd do
There you go.
is I would take the letter and I would have the PowerPoint follow the same flow.
Use the letter as an outline.
Yes,
Okay.
okay? Because the reader of the letter, whoever comes to the event on the library, presumably will have read the letter. So they'll walk in there with the facts already presented and the logic already presented to them. So it makes sense to use that frame of reference in their head and build on it in the PowerPoint. That's what I do.
I would also suggest that we want our presentation to be far shorter than our meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole point.
Good idea.
Point of this was
Right.
really to find out if the public had any questions. and
Greg,
address
thank you
the
very
public,
much for putting that on the record.
Yeah.
Right? We were
I'll
gonna
take
answer
that.
the public's questions. That's what we were doing.
Yes.
We don't necessarily have to regurgitate
Right.
No,
the
I
letter.
agree with
No.
you.
So
Okay.
succinct and,
All right. I'm going to, Lisa, you had a couple of things, but
Okay.
should we do them or should we move
I
them?
can be 1 minute.
1 minute. We got
Okay.
1 minute for new old
I had
business.
sent
and then
you
we're gonna-
all a questionnaire because I met with the North Haven Water Committee about 3 weeks ago. They are very impressed with the work that gets done on Shelter Island. They wanted to know if they could model their work off of ours. And so I said I would come to the committee and ask if it was okay if we could share. This is all regards to fertilizer legislation. So I said I would ask if I could share the legislation, even though it isn't really gone before the state yet. And that's okay. And also if I could share what's the other part? The brochure.
The brochure.
And I'm assuming I can share
yes,
that
I
brochure.
think it's a good idea.
And then also, and there were a couple other documents they wanted to know if we could send. I said, I think so. It's
And always
free
just
anyway.
with,
It's
and always
out there.
just with clarity about what stage it's at. This
Yeah.
is not yet something our board
course.
has done, or this is not yet something approved by the state, but, right.
But they're very excited and they're very happy to see us doing it and they're hoping to follow suit and in fact, ask other towns to take up this fertilizer legislation. And I'm excited because it shows a willingness for us, for a lot of communities to
More broad.
really tackle this. And one more thing I wanted to do, we did bring up we didn't bring up, but we started the campaign about pharmaceuticals last year
Right.
with the posters.
Right.
I would like to revisit that
Yes.
and put it out into the public again this year.
Mhm.
So if anybody has any brainstorming ideas of how to do that, except maybe put it in the paper, I don't know if that's the best way. Perhaps we could put something on the new town information page that is up and running, yes?
Bulletin boards of houses of worship.
We can put
Okay,
paper
yeah.
copies around town, but we could also post on the website, put it on social media. We could see about doing a notify me like email blast with the WAC when you send out your agenda, also send out that information. We'll look at ways to do it.
And I don't know if we want to expound on the poster, which was very, brief, but it said, I think, pretty much
I thought it
succinctly,
was
it said
pretty
it all.
effective
So do
poster.
we want to just keep that language?
Is there a big clear sign out in front of the police department that would say deposit your drugs here? Something like that.
To my knowledge, no.
I don't think we have it.
There is no.
That would be a good sign, though. Yeah, we should put that up.
That would be an interesting thing, just say.
Bring your drugs here.
Yeah, Larry, some good wording you have to have.
Well, one of my feelings was, and this was supported by the public,
Yeah.
was that not a lot of
Night
people feel
stay.
comfortable going to the police
I know,
department with their
With their
drugs.
drugs.
So we get
We have the
the
pharmacy.
blue box down at the pharmacy,
Right.
which accepts a certain class of opiates.
That would be a good poster place too.
We could put a blue box in the foyer of the police department.
It is.
That's where it is.
Yeah, but people are less comfortable.
But still, not a lot of people want to go over there with their drugs. Just saying.
All right, so again, we want to keep things toward wrapping up, but go ahead.
Right, okay. It's great that we got the letter out. It's great that we're having the meeting on the 5th, on May 5th. How are we going about evaluating the alternatives to the town, available to the town, and the affected people with regard to the nitrate issue in the center? So it's one thing to tell people that there's an issue. It's another thing to present to them different alternatives. Some of those alternatives are individual to the home. Another alternative is, and we've talked about it, is the community water supply option. I have no idea the cost effectiveness of the appropriateness of either one. I really don't have an opinion. How are we
So I don't
going
think,
to bottom that out?
I don't think that we can ourselves say, this is what we should do, or this is what we should do. What I think that, and I don't think this is something that will, I think that on the 5th, it's factual. It's what, here's what we know.
Okay.
We need to continue these meetings with the public now through the entire season, when everybody's out here, just like we did last year. Regular meetings at the library, under the tent when it's nice weather, where these kinds of, the community can come together more about what approaches seem reasonable. I doubt that there's going to be a one-size-fits-all ever. So, you know, there may be a little bit of public water expansion. There may be a lot of private people do what they have to do because they're protecting themselves. There may be some people who make decisions about bottled water. We probably do need to understand better the plastics issue because, you know, maybe those 5-gallon jugs are different than buying a case of bottled water.
We also have the option of, as you brought up before, Andrew, about looking at municipal water as a possibility for distributing water to people, but that's other than laying lines. I'm just saying for people who are very nervous, instead of buying bottled water at IGA, can the town supply bottled water at a site from municipal water supply?
Okay.
Just saying.
So Doug is getting ready to go.
Okay.
I'm
too.
gotta go, guys.
Me too.
I think it's important
Yes,
that we have these public discussions,
right?
but I also think it's important that alternatives be developed and presented in those public discussions so the public discussions can be about something.
About it, solving the problem rather than just there's a problem.
Right.
And that could be a subcommittee thing.
Agreed. And
Like a subcommittee can look at the alternatives. RO systems aren't efficient.
So
we
I
will
look
get,
at
we will
our
get some
chairman.
back, we will get some feedback on May 5th. And we will meet again on May 20th, I believe.
Fine. I look to our chairman to kind of guide
Keep us
that.
going
process.
along that route of, yes,
You gotta-
solving problems rather than just
Correct.
stating problems. Absolutely.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, second? All right.
Joe, I like doing it.